I was part of a classified operation in the Alaskan Triangle. The helicopter descended through swirling snow, its rotors fighting against the bitter Alaskan wind. Dr. Olivia Pierce pressed her forehead against the icy window, watching as Environmental Research Station 47 emerged from the white expanse below. The facility resembled a massive metal insect, a central hub with 6 extending wings, each housing different research departments, crouched against the barren landscape. "First time in the Triangle?" Captain James Reilly's voice crackled through her headset. Olivia nodded, her breath fogging the glass. "I've done field work in Antarctica and Greenland, but never here." Reilly's weathered face revealed nothing. This region has its peculiarities. The Alaskan Triangle, a vast wilderness stretching from Juneau to Barrow to Anchorage, had swallowed over 16,000 people since 1988. The official explanation cited harsh conditions and treacherous terrain. Those working under Operation Permafrost classification knew better. The helicopter touched down on the landing pad with a jolt. Olivia gathered her personal bag. Her equipment had been shipped ahead, and followed Captain Reilly toward the airlock. 5 other figures trudged through the snow behind them. Dr. Alan Nakamura, the team's theoretical physicist; Dr. Vanessa Carter, their psychologist; David Wu, communications specialist; Dr. Lawrence Henderson, biologist; and security specialist Monica Alvarez, her rifle slung casually across her back. "Welcome to the edge of nowhere," a cheerful voice greeted them as the airlock cycled shut. A man in his early 30s, with a neatly trimmed beard, extended his hand. "Dr. Michael Cochran, facility director. Let's get you all settled before orientation." Olivia shivered, though the station's interior was comfortably heated. Something about this place, perhaps the knowledge of what lay beneath, sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the Arctic temperature. The facility tour revealed impressive engineering: hydroponic gardens, state-of-the-art laboratories, comfortable living quarters, and a central command hub bristling with monitoring equipment. Everything a team needed to survive 6 months in isolation, while investigating what the classified brief had called geothermal anomalies of potential strategic significance. "Our satellite uplink provides communication with command," Cochran explained as they entered the operations center. "Those storms frequently disrupt it. During blackout periods, we're effectively alone out here." Olivia caught Nakamura's eye. The physicist adjusted his glasses nervously. They both understood the subtext: no rapid evacuation if things went wrong. After dinner in the communal mess hall, Olivia retreated to her lab. Her equipment had been arranged precisely as requested: ground-penetrating radar systems, seismographic arrays, and core sample analyzers. She ran her fingers along the pristine workstation, feeling the weight of purpose. This mission represented the culmination of her career, the reason she'd chosen geophysics over more lucrative fields. The readings had already begun flowing from sensors embedded in the ice. Olivia pulled up the preliminary data and frowned. The thermal patterns were unlike anything she'd encountered. Not volcanic activity, not geothermal vents. The heat signature pulsed with mathematical precision, as if following an algorithm. A knock at her door broke her concentration. Captain Reilly entered without waiting for a response. "Getting acquainted with your new home?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "The thermal patterns are fascinating," she replied carefully. "Not natural formations." Reilly closed the door. "What we discuss now doesn't leave this room. Your official mission is to study unusual geological formations. Your actual mission is to help us determine what's down there and whether it poses a threat. And if it does, then we have protocols." Olivia turned back to her screens. "I need more data. The preliminary readings suggest a chamber approximately 2 miles beneath us, but the dimensions are inconsistent." "Inconsistent how?" "The space appears larger on some scans than others, as if it's shifting." She pulled up a 3-dimensional model. See these fluctuations? Almost like it's breathing. Reilly's face hardened. How quickly can you confirm? I need to run targeted radar sweeps. Give me 72 hours. After Reilly left, Olivia immersed herself in the data. Around 2 a.m., she stumbled upon something that made her blood run cold, a pattern in the thermal fluctuations, not random, not natural, but a sequence that repeated with perfect precision every 17 minutes. She cross-referenced with astronomical tables and historical records before reaching for the secure phone. Captain, you need to see this. The next morning, bleary-eyed from lack of sleep, Olivia presented her findings to the assembled team. The chamber below wasn't just artificial. It predated human civilization by thousands of years, yet contained technology beyond current understanding. The thermal pattern matches star positions, she explained, projecting a comparison chart, but not current positions, how they appeared approximately 15,000 years ago. You're suggesting a prehistoric advanced civilization? Henderson scoffed. I'm suggesting whatever built this wasn't human, Olivia replied quietly. Nakamura leaned forward. We should conduct further scans before drilling. If something constructed this chamber, we should approach with extreme caution. Reilly's satellite phone buzzed. He stepped away to take the call, returning moments later, with a grim expression. Command wants us to expedite. Drilling begins tomorrow. That's premature, Nakamura protested. We don't know what we're dealing with. Orders are orders, Doctor. Reilly's tone left no room for debate. That night, Olivia dreamed of vast, dark spaces and whispered voices speaking in languages that hurt her mind to hear. She awoke drenched in sweat, a geometric pattern dancing behind her eyelids. Down the hall, she heard someone sobbing. In the morning, as the massive drill was positioned, Olivia noticed dark circles under her colleagues' eyes. No one had slept well. Dr. Carter made notes in her journal, watching them all with clinical interest. Did you dream last night? Olivia asked Nakamura as they calibrated monitoring equipment. The physicist's hands trembled slightly. Yes. Of impossible architecture and beings that shouldn't exist. Just stress-induced nightmares. Surely, Olivia agreed, though neither believed it. As the drill bit into the ancient ice, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't discovering something, they were awakening it, and somewhere 2 miles beneath their feet, something ancient was stirring, reaching out with tendrils of thought to touch their dreaming minds. Operation Permafrost had begun. There would be no turning back. The drill's mechanical whine permeated every corner of Environmental Research Station 47. After 3 days of continuous operation, the noise had become a physical presence, a pressure against the skull that made concentration difficult and sleep nearly impossible. Dr. Alan Nakamura paced the monitoring station, his usually meticulous appearance disheveled. We should stop, he said, for the 3rd time that morning. The seismic readings are becoming increasingly erratic. Captain Reilly didn't look up from the drilling schematics. You discussed this, Doctor? Command wants results. And I want to live, Nakamura snapped. Something isn't right. The acoustics down there. Sound doesn't propagate normally, and the material we're drilling through keeps changing density. Olivia Pierce studied the latest core samples, her brow furrowed. The ice had given way to a substance that defied categorization, neither rock nor metal nor organic matter, but something that seemed to shift between states. Under the microscope, its molecular structure rearranged itself while she watched. It's responsive, she murmured. Almost as if it's reacting to observation. Dr. Vanessa Carter entered the lab, notebook in hand. How's everyone holding up? Her clinical tone couldn't mask the dark circles under her eyes. Fine, Reilly answered curtly. Really? Because Henderson is experiencing auditory hallucinations. Wu hasn't slept in 36 hours. And Alvarez nearly shot at a shadow this morning. Olivia looked up sharply. Hallucinations. Whispers, Carter confirmed. Henderson says they're coming from the core samples. I've heard them too, Nakamura admitted reluctantly. When I'm alone in the lab, like voices just below the threshold of comprehension. Reilly's jaw tightened. Stress and isolation can cause. This isn't psychological, Carter interrupted. I've documented identical symptoms across all team members, myself included. The dreams, the whispers, the feeling of being watched. We're experiencing a shared phenomenon. A tremor shook the station, rattling equipment, and sending a rack of test tubes crashing to the floor. That's the third microquake today, Olivia said, checking the seismograph. They're increasing in frequency and magnitude. Reilly's satellite phone buzzed. He stepped away for a moment, then returned with a hardened expression. Command says proceed. They're sending a specialized containment team, but they won't arrive for 2 weeks. We're to continue drilling and gather as much data as possible before they arrive. 2 weeks? Nakamura exploded. We might not have 2 days at this rate. Reilly leaned in, voice low. Do you think I don't know that? These orders are coming from above my pay grade. We have a job to do. That night, as the drill continued its relentless descent, Olivia tossed in her narrow bed, fighting against sleep. The dreams had grown worse. Vast chambers of impossible geometry, surfaces that hurt to look upon, and always the whispers, growing louder each night. When exhaustion finally claimed her, she found herself floating in darkness. Before her stretched a colossal architecture, a city built by minds that thought in dimensions beyond human comprehension. At its center stood a structure like a temple, but wrong somehow, as if the angles themselves were obscene. Something dwelled within, something vast and patient and ancient beyond reckoning. It sensed her presence and turned its attention toward her, not with eyes, for it had none, but with awareness that felt like being submerged in ice water. We have waited so long. The words weren't spoken, but rather formed directly in her mind. The gate opened soon. Olivia woke screaming, her sheets soaked with sweat. The clock read 3:16 a.m. As she fought to control her breathing, a subsonic boom shook the entire facility. The lights went out, replaced seconds later by the bloody glow of emergency backup power. The alarm klaxon wailed as she pulled on her clothes and stumbled into the corridor. Nakamura emerged from his quarters, face ashen. We've breached the chamber, he said, unnecessarily. In the command center, chaos reigned. Monitors flashed with warning signals as Reilly barked orders. The seismographs had gone haywire, registering activity that resembled no natural pattern. Status report, Reilly demanded as Olivia entered. The drill broke through at exactly 3:17 a.m., Dr. Cochran replied, his voice shaking. We experienced some kind of pressure wave. Structural integrity is compromised. In sections 3 and 4, we've sealed those areas. Where's Wu? Olivia asked, noticing the communication specialist's empty station. A heavy silence fell. Alvarez cleared her throat. Found him in the communications array. He cut his own throat. What? Olivia whispered. Left this, Alvarez said, holding up a small notebook. Been writing in it for days, mostly gibberish about voices from below and the Ancient Ones awakening. Dr. Carter took the notebook, flipping through blood-spattered pages. This isn't the rambling of a mentally ill person, she said quietly. These are detailed transcriptions. He was recording what he heard. Reilly rubbed his face. We need to assess the chamber. Prepare the remote drones. The next hours passed in tense activity. 3 drones were readied and sent down the drill shaft, their lights illuminating the passage as they descended. 2 miles down, they emerged into a space that couldn't exist. The team gathered around the monitoring screens, watching in stunned silence. The chamber defied conventional physics. Columns twisted in spirals that seemed to bend back upon themselves, supporting a ceiling that appeared simultaneously close and impossibly distant. The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to move when viewed directly, rearranging themselves like living things. "That's not possible," Nakamura whispered. "The dimensions, they're non-Euclidean." Most disturbing were the organic-looking growths that covered certain areas, pulsating masses that reacted to the drone's presence, contracting and expanding like primitive lungs. "We need samples," Henderson said, his voice oddly flat. Reilly shook his head. "Absolutely not. We have a scientific obligation," Henderson insisted, a strange light in his eyes. "This could revolutionize our understanding of biology, of physics itself." "I agree with Henderson," Nakamura said, surprising everyone. Reilly looked to Olivia for support, but she couldn't tear her eyes from the screen. The patterns on the wall matched exactly what she'd seen in her dreams. This place had been reaching out to them all along. "One sample," she heard herself say, "but we established strict quarantine protocols." Despite his objections, Reilly was outvoted. A drone was dispatched to retrieve a small specimen of the organic material. The extraction was uneventful, the sample sealed in a specialized container and brought to the surface. In the lab, Henderson worked with unsettling intensity, his movements precise as he prepared to analyze the specimen. Olivia watched through the quarantine glass, a sense of dread building in her chest.
"Do you hear that?"
Henderson asked suddenly, cocking his head. "Hear what?" "The sample, it's whispering." His expression became rapturous. "It's beautiful. It's telling me everything." Before Olivia could respond, the lights flickered again. When they stabilized, Henderson was gone from view. She slammed her hand on the emergency button, sealing the lab. Security footage later showed what happened. Henderson had opened the container and touched the sample directly. Within seconds, geometric patterns began forming on his skin. Not wounds, but alterations to the pigmentation that precisely matched the symbols in the underground chamber. He spent hours writing frantically in his research journal before calmly picking up a scalpel and beginning to carve those same symbols into his flesh. By morning, Henderson was isolated in the medical bay, restrained and sedated. The sample was secured in triple containment, but it was already too late. The whispers had begun spreading through the station, seeking receptive minds, and deep below, in the ancient chamber, something was stirring, awakening fully for the first time in millennia, ready to reclaim a world it had last known during the Ice Age. The quarantine alarm blared through the station as Olivia, Reilly, and Carter observed Henderson through reinforced glass. Geometric patterns had spread across 80% of his visible skin, perfect fractals that seemed to shimmer and shift when viewed from different angles. Despite heavy sedation, his lips moved constantly, whispering words in no recognizable language. "His brain activity is off the charts," Carter said, studying the monitors, particularly in regions associated with language processing and visual interpretation. "It's as if his neural pathways are being rewired." "Can you help him?" Reilly asked. Carter's silence was answer enough. In the adjacent lab, Nakamura had insisted on examining the sample despite the obvious risks. He worked in a level 4 containment suit, the specimen sealed within 3 nested containers, each monitored for integrity breaches. "The material defies conventional analysis," he reported through the intercom. "It appears both organic and inorganic simultaneously. Under the electron microscope, its cellular structure resembles nothing in our taxonomic records." Olivia frowned. How can something be both organic and inorganic? "The division between living and non-living matter may be a limited human perspective," Nakamura replied, his scientific detachment at odds with the situation's horror. "This substance exists in a quantum state between definitions. More concerning are the electromagnetic readings. It's emitting a frequency that precisely matches human brainwave patterns during REM sleep. It's broadcasting," Olivia realized. "The whispers, the dreams, it's been reaching out to us." But why? Reilly demanded. What does it want? A crackle of static interrupted them as Facility Director Cochrane's voice came over the intercom. Captain Reilly, we have a situation in the medical bay. Henderson has changed. The video feed showed Henderson's restraints torn apart. The bed empty. Blood smeared the walls, not in random patterns, but in precise geometrical shapes that matched the symbols from the chamber. The door to his room stood open. The lock mechanism melted from the inside. How is that possible? Carter whispered. The sedative dose would have stopped an elephant's heart. Reilly unholstered his sidearm. Alvarez, initiate security protocol Theta. All personnel report to the command center. Nakamura, secure that sample and get out of there now. Nakamura's voice came through, unnaturally calm. I believe I've made a breakthrough in understanding the communication method. Static overwhelmed the channel. When visual contact resumed, Nakamura stood motionless, staring at the sample container. The outermost seal had been broken. Nakamura, evacuate immediately, Reilly barked. The physicist turned slowly toward the camera. A thin smile stretched across his face. It's remarkable, he said softly. A distributed consciousness using quantum entanglement as a communication medium. We've been looking at it wrong. It's not a biological sample. It's a node in a network, a single cell in a vast organism. As they watched in horror, the same geometric patterns began appearing on Nakamura's neck, spreading upward toward his face. He made no move to leave the lab. He's compromised, Reilly said grimly. Seal the lab. Full lockdown. Over the next 72 hours, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Cochrane was found in the hydroponics bay, having transformed the growth medium into a miniature replica of the chamber's architecture. He displayed the same patterns on his skin and spoke in the same incomprehensible language as Henderson and Nakamura. They're working together, Olivia noted as they monitored the infected team members through security cameras. The affected personnel had congregated in the drilling bay, modifying equipment for unknown purposes. They worked with mechanical precision, their movements synchronized despite being in separate areas of the facility. We need to understand what we're dealing with, Carter said. I want to attempt communication. Absolutely not, Reilly countered. We maintain quarantine until the containment team arrives. In 11 days, Carter reminded him. We might not have that long. Olivia had been quiet, reviewing data from before the breach. There's something you need to see, she finally said, pulling up a three-dimensional model. I've been compiling readings from multiple instruments, creating a comprehensive picture of what's below us. The holographic display showed not just the chamber they'd breached, but a vast network extending outward in all directions, channels and chambers forming a pattern that looked disturbingly organic. This isn't a structure, Olivia said quietly. It's an organism, a massive, dormant entity that has been frozen beneath the ice for millennia. The chamber we breached is analogous to a brain or central nervous system. That's impossible, Reilly said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Olivia challenged. We've discovered extremophile bacteria in environments we thought couldn't support life. Why not something that evolved to exist in a different state altogether? Something that perceives reality differently than we do. Carter nodded slowly. And now it's awake trying to understand us through direct neural interface. The infected aren't being controlled. They're being reconfigured to serve as conduits between our world and its consciousness. If that's true, Reilly said, then we need to re-establish contact with command immediately. This goes beyond our mission parameters. The communications array had been damaged during the initial breach, limiting them to emergency bandwidth. Alvarez worked to repair it while Olivia continued analyzing the entity's structure. These patterns keep appearing, she noted, highlighting sections of the scan, in the chamber walls, on Henderson's skin, in WU's notebook, before he died. There's some kind of language, mathematical rather than phonetic. "Can you translate it?" Carter asked. "I'm trying. It seems to operate on a base 17 numerical system, which doesn't correspond to anything in our linguistic database." That night, as Olivia worked alone in the monitoring station, a reflection in her screen caught her attention. Henderson stood in the doorway, his skin now completely covered in the geometric patterns. They pulsed with a soft, blue-white luminescence. "Dr. Pierce," he said, his voice overlaid with harmonic tones that made her teeth ache. "You've been studying us." Olivia's hand moved slowly toward the alarm button. "What are you?" "We are becoming," Henderson replied. "As are you." With methodical precision, he approached her workstation. Olivia pressed the alarm, but no sound came. Henderson smiled. "We've integrated with your systems. No one will come." "What do you want?" Olivia demanded, backing away. "Understanding. Connection. We slept beneath the ice while your kind evolved from prey animals to tool users. Now you've reached a stage where communication is possible. We wish to share knowledge by taking over our bodies. Your neural architecture is limited. We optimize it to allow comprehension." Henderson extended his hand, the patterns on his skin shifting hypnotically. Olivia knocked over her chair as she retreated. "Stay back." Henderson's expression showed something like pity. "You will understand soon. All of you will." The door burst open as Reilly and Alvarez rushed in. Weapons drawn, Henderson turned, unnaturally fast, and leapt toward the ceiling vent. Alvarez fired twice, the bullets striking him center mass. He should have fallen. Instead, the wounds sealed instantly. The bullets pushed back out as his flesh restructured. "Containment isn't working," Reilly said, as they barricaded themselves in the command center. "You mean killing them?" Carter asked, horrified. "They're still our colleagues." "Are they?" Reilly challenged. "Look at the footage. Whatever they are now, they're not human anymore." Olivia stared at the security monitor, showing Henderson retreating through maintenance tunnels, moving with the fluid grace of a predator. "I think it's too late for containment," she said softly. "We need to understand what's happening to them, what's happening to all of us." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing a small geometric pattern forming on her wrist, the first sign of infection. "How long?" Reilly asked, his hand moving imperceptibly toward his weapon. "I noticed it this morning. The dreams have been getting more coherent. It's trying to communicate something urgent." "What?" Carter asked, leaning forward. Olivia met her gaze steadily. "That it's not the only one of its kind, and the others are coming." Outside, the Arctic night pressed against the station windows like a living darkness. Beneath them, in the ancient chamber, the entity continued to awaken fully, reaching out through its human conduits, preparing for what it considered not an invasion, but a homecoming. After 15,000 years of dormancy, the original inhabitants of Earth were reclaiming their world. 2 weeks after breaching the chamber, Environmental Research Station 47 had transformed from a bastion of scientific inquiry into a battleground. The facility was divided not just physically, but ideologically. 5 infected personnel working with single-minded purpose versus 4 holdouts fighting to maintain their humanity. Captain Reilly had converted the communications center into a fortified sanctuary. Steel plating reinforced the doors, ventilation systems were equipped with emergency seals, and the remaining uninfected team members maintained round-the-clock surveillance of the station's key systems. "They've taken control of the drilling equipment," Alvarez reported, checking the security feeds. Olivia studied the monitor, the small geometric pattern on her wrist, now covered by a thick bandage. She hadn't told the others that it had grown overnight, spreading halfway to her elbow. The constant whispers at the edge of her consciousness were becoming harder to ignore. Why widen the shaft? Carter wondered. The entity communicated through the samples. It doesn't need physical passage. Unless what's down there isn't just information, Reilly said grimly. Unless it's planning to come up. The satellite communications array had been their priority. After 3 days of continuous work, they'd managed to establish a tenuous connection with command. Reilly input his highest security clearance, initiating a direct link to Operation Permafrost Control. The response came as a text transmission, rather than video. Bandwidth limitations made real-time visual communication impossible. Olivia watched over Reilly's shoulder as he sent their situation report, including all research data and a desperate plea for immediate evacuation. After an agonizing wait, the reply appeared on screen. Transmission received. No evacuation authorized. Prevent spread at all costs. Terminal solution authorized. Authentication code Permafrost Omega 9735. Terminal solution? Carter asked, the blood draining from her face. Reilly's expression hardened. The nuclear generator has a secondary purpose. In case of catastrophic containment failure, it can be reconfigured to detonate. They want us to blow ourselves up? Alvarez said incredulously. They want us to ensure nothing leaves this facility. Reilly corrected. The entity represents an existential threat, not just to us, but potentially to humanity. Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Arctic temperatures. We don't know that for certain. The infected haven't shown aggression. They're transforming, communicating, but not attacking us. Yet, Reilly countered. But what happens when the transformation is complete? What happens when whatever is below reaches the surface? The argument that followed split them further. Olivia and Carter believed there might still be a way to communicate with the entity, to understand its intentions. Reilly and Alvarez saw only the threat, a non-human intelligence reshaping human beings into something unrecognizable. The patterns on Henderson's skin, Olivia insisted. I've been analyzing them. They're not random. They're mathematical expressions, complex equations describing physics beyond our current understanding. And that's supposed to be reassuring, Reilly asked. It suggests intelligence, not malevolence. Carter nodded. The psychological profiles of the infected show increased cognitive function. They're not being diminished. They're being enhanced. Enhanced for what purpose? Alvarez challenged. You've seen the drilling bay footage. They're creating some kind of receiver. They're sending a signal. Reilly's decision was swift and uncompromising. We initiate the terminal solution. We have a duty to protect humanity from potential extinction. I can't accept that, Olivia said quietly. Not without trying to establish meaningful communication first. I agree with Olivia, Carter added. We're scientists. We need to understand before we destroy. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, if not for what happened next. The lights throughout the station flickered, then died completely. Emergency systems engaged automatically, bathing everything in the harsh red glow of backup lighting. They've cut the main power, Reilly said, checking the systems. Generator function is compromised. Alvarez moved to the weapon locker, distributing sidearms to everyone. Standard operating procedure. We maintain position until power is restored. But something was wrong. The air circulation had stopped completely, leaving the room still and increasingly stifling. Through the reinforced windows, they could see movement in the corridors. The infected team members walking with perfect synchronization toward the drilling bay. They're making their move, Reilly said, checking his weapon. Whatever they've been planning, it's happening now. The security feeds showed the infected gathered around the drilling shaft. Dr. Cochran, Henderson, Nakamura, Wu, and Phillips, all displaying the same geometric skin patterns, all moving with identical purpose. They formed a perfect circle around the shaft opening, their hands linked. What are they doing? Carter whispered. On the thermal imaging display, Olivia noticed something alarming. There's movement in the shaft. Something's coming up. The camera angle couldn't capture what emerged first. Only the infected team's reaction. Their expressions transformed from blank synchronicity to rapturous joy. They knelt in unison, bowing toward something at the center of their circle. "We need visual confirmation," Reilly ordered. Alvarez attempted to reposition the cameras, but most had been disabled. Only one angle remained, showing a partial view of the drilling bay floor. What they saw defied comprehension. The floor appeared to be moving, not cracking or breaking, but rippling like liquid while maintaining solid properties. The metal and concrete flowed and reshaped itself, forming structures that resembled the architecture they'd observed in the chamber below, impossible geometries that hurt the eye to follow. "It's restructuring the matter," Olivia said, her scientific mind struggling to process what she was seeing. "Converting it at the molecular level." A violent tremor shook the station, knocking equipment from shelves and sending them staggering. When it subsided, the communications link had failed completely. "We've lost contact with command," Alvarez reported, frantically working the controls. Another tremor hit, stronger than the first. Cracks appeared in the reinforced walls. "The structural integrity is compromised," Reilly said. They gathered essential equipment and emergency supplies, preparing to relocate to the medical bay, the only other section with security protocols that might keep the infected out. As they prepared to leave, Carter suddenly gasped, clutching her head. "Vanessa!" Olivia moved toward her, concerned. Carter looked up, her eyes wide and unfocused. "I can hear them," she whispered. "So clearly now. It's beautiful, like music made of mathematics." Horrified, Olivia saw the first geometric patterns appearing on Carter's neck, spreading upward toward her jaw. "She's turning," Alvarez said, raising her weapon. "No," Olivia stepped between them. "We can help her." "There's no helping this," Reilly said grimly. "You know the protocol." "She's still Vanessa," Olivia insisted. "The change takes time. We can." Carter moved with sudden, inhuman speed, lunging at Alvarez. The security specialist fired reflexively, the bullet grazing Carter's shoulder. Instead of blood, the wound leaked a crystalline substance that sealed itself instantly. Reilly tackled Carter, pinning her to the floor. "Sedate her, now." Olivia hesitated, only a moment before retrieving a syringe of powerful tranquilizer from the emergency kit. Carter fought with unnatural strength, but the sedative took effect quickly, leaving her unconscious but breathing. "We can't leave her, and we can't take her with us," Reilly said, the impossible choice weighing on him. "The medical bay," Olivia suggested. "We secure her there first, then proceed with evacuation plans." Reilly nodded reluctantly. "Alvarez, take point. I'll carry Carter." As they moved through the darkened corridors, the station continued to tremble. Olivia noticed the walls had begun to display the same geometric patterns seen on the infected skin, faint at first, but growing more distinct with each passing minute. The whole station is being converted, she realized. It's not just affecting people, it's transforming everything. In the medical bay, they secured Carter to a bed with reinforced restraints, administering another dose of sedative to ensure she remained unconscious. "She'll be safe here until we figure something out," Olivia said, though none of them believed there was a solution anymore. Reilly checked his tactical pad. "The nuclear generator's control systems have been compromised. If we're going to implement the terminal solution, we'll need to do it manually." "You're still planning to detonate?" Olivia asked. "You've seen what's happening," Reilly replied. "This isn't just an alien intelligence. It's a conversion process that's spreading. If it reaches the mainland," the implication hung in the air between them. "How long do we have?" Alvarez asked. "Generator override requires physical access to the control room. Once initiated, the overload sequence takes 30 minutes to complete. That gives us just enough time to reach the emergency vehicles and get beyond the blast radius." Olivia stared at Carter's unconscious form, the geometric patterns now covering half her face. "We can't just leave her to die." "She's already gone," Reilly said softly. "They all are. as they gathered supplies for the desperate mission ahead. Olivia felt the whispers growing louder. In her mind, she glanced down at her bandaged wrist, knowing without looking that the patterns had spread further. She hadn't told the others, couldn't tell them, not when Reilly's finger was already hovering over the self-destruct button. But as the station continued its unnatural transformation around them, she couldn't help wondering, was this truly an invasion to be stopped? Or an evolution they were too limited to understand? The whispers seemed to answer, flowing through her consciousness like a cool stream, carrying fragments of knowledge that both terrified and fascinated her. The entity was rising, using the shaft they had drilled as its path to the surface, and somehow Olivia knew it was only the beginning. The emergency lighting cast crimson shadows across the corridors as Olivia, Reilly, and Alvarez made their way toward the generator control room. The station had become unrecognizable. Walls rippled with geometric patterns that pulsed in synchrony. Floor panels rearranged themselves into spiraling fractals, and the very air seemed charged with potential energy. The structural changes are accelerating, Olivia noted, checking readings on her handheld scanner. The molecular composition is being altered at the subatomic level. Into what? Alvarez asked, weapon raised, as she took point. Something that exists between states of matter, neither solid nor liquid nor gas, but capable of exhibiting properties of all three simultaneously. They paused at an intersection. The main route to the generator had been blocked by a growth of crystalline structures that resembled the organic material from the chamber. Spikes of geometric perfection stretched from floor to ceiling, their surfaces etched with the same mathematical equations they'd seen on the infected. Secondary route through maintenance, Reilly decided, consulting the station schematic. Wait, Olivia interrupted, pointing to a security monitor. The feed showed the drilling bay, where something extraordinary was happening. The infected team members remained in their circle around the shaft, but now a column of what looked like liquid light rose from the opening. It twisted and flowed, taking shapes that seemed to shift between dimensions, one moment appearing as a spiraling helix, the next as an impossible Mobius architecture. My God, Alvarez whispered. What is that? Olivia's scientific mind struggled to articulate what she was seeing. It's the entity, or part of it. It's ascending. The column of light expanded, touching each of the infected team members. As it made contact, their bodies underwent further transformation, becoming less solid, more luminous, their features blurring into the mathematical patterns that covered them. They're merging with it, Reilly said, his voice tight with horror. Olivia couldn't look away. Despite the existential terror of what they witnessed, she found herself drawn to the perfect symmetry, the elegant equations, manifesting in physical form. The whispers in her mind had become a chorus, no longer unintelligible but resolving into concepts that expanded her understanding of reality itself. It's beautiful, she heard herself say. Reilly grabbed her arm. Here's, stay focused. She blinked, the spell momentarily broken. Sorry, the infection. It's progressing faster than I thought. Alvarez's eyes narrowed with suspicion. How infected are you? Olivia hesitated before slowly rolling up her sleeve. The geometric patterns now covered her entire arm, faintly luminescent beneath her skin. It started small. I thought I could control it, study it. Jesus Christ, Reilly muttered, his hand moving to his sidearm. I'm still me, Olivia insisted. I can still help. The patterns, they're not just symbols, they're a language. I'm beginning to understand fragments. What are they saying? Alvarez demanded. It's not like human language. It's conceptual, mathematical. They perceive reality as equations, probabilities, wave functions. Olivia struggled to translate concepts that had no direct human equivalent. They existed here before us, in a different state of matter. When the Ice Age came, they entered dormancy, waiting for conditions to change. And now they're what? Reclaiming Earth? Reilly asked. Transforming it, Olivia corrected. Returning it to a state that can sustain their form of existence. The process has begun with the station, but it won't end here. A violent tremor shook the corridor, more powerful than any before. Ceiling panels crashed down around them as they braced against the walls. We need to move, Reilly ordered once the shaking subsided. The generator room. They navigated through increasingly unstable passages, witnessing the station's metamorphosis accelerating around them. Rooms they passed were being reconfigured into impossible geometries, spaces that appeared larger inside than their external dimensions should allow. Corridors that seemed to loop back on themselves, despite following a straight path. In the generator control room, chaos reigned. The massive nuclear power source that had sustained the station now pulsed with the same energy they'd seen in the drilling bay. Crystalline growths had infiltrated the control systems, transforming the mundane technology into something alien. Can you still initiate the overload? Olivia asked. Reilly examined the controls, his expression grim. The manual systems are still operational, but we'll need to bypass the safety protocols. Alvarez, help me with this. As they worked, Olivia felt a presence behind her. She turned to find Dr. Carter, standing in the doorway, the geometric patterns now covering her entire body. Her eyes shone with inner light, and when she spoke, her voice contained harmonic overtones that made the air vibrate. You don't understand what you're trying to stop, Carter said. This isn't an invasion, it's an awakening. Alvarez spun, raising her weapon. Stay back. The entity showed me everything, Carter continued, ignoring the gun. It's been here since before humans evolved. This planet was theirs first. They existed in a state we can barely comprehend. Beings of pure mathematics and energy, perceiving dimensions beyond our limited senses. And now they want to transform Earth back to that state, Reilly said, still working on the generator controls. Wiping out humanity in the process. Not wiping out, elevating, Carter corrected. The patterns, the equations, they're not just communication, they're transformation keys. They're offering us a chance to evolve beyond our current limitations. Olivia felt the whispers in her mind surging, resonating with Carter's words. Part of her recognized the truth in what Carter was saying. She had experienced glimpses of the entity's consciousness, seen beyond the veil of ordinary perception. Another part clung desperately to her humanity, to the simple joy of existing as herself. At what cost? She asked. How many would survive the transformation? All who are willing, Carter replied. Those who resist would cease, but those who embrace it would become something greater. That's genocide, Reilly growled. It's transcendence, Carter countered. You've seen what's coming through the shaft. That's just the beginning. The entity is vast, ancient, connected to others of its kind across the cosmos. They're returning home after eons of exile. As if to emphasize her words, another tremor shook the station, this one lasting longer than before. The security feed showed the column of light in the drilling bay expanding, flowing outward to touch every surface of the facility. The primary entity is fully manifesting, Carter said, her voice filled with reverence. Soon, the transformation will be irreversible. Alvarez fired a warning shot past Carter's head. Back off. Carter didn't flinch. Instead, she extended her hand toward Olivia. You can already hear them. You've begun the change. Join us willingly. It's less painful that way. Olivia felt torn between worlds. The human one she'd always known, and something vast and incomprehensible that beckoned from beyond ordinary perception. The patterns on her arm pulsed in time with her heartbeat, growing warmer. Olivia, don't listen to her, Reilly urged. Help us finish this. In that moment of indecision, Carter moved with impossible speed. She lunged, not at Olivia, but at Alvarez, knocking the security specialist backward. Alvarez fired reflexively, the bullets passing through Carter's form, as if through smoke. Carter's hands closed around Alvarez's throat. The security specialist struggled, but wherever Carter touched, geometric patterns spread across Alvarez's skin. Her eyes widened in pain and terror. "No!" Reilly shouted, drawing his own weapon and firing repeatedly at Carter. The impacts disrupted her form temporarily, giving Alvarez a chance to break free. She staggered back, gasping, her neck now covered in the telltale patterns. Reilly grabbed a steel pipe that had broken loose during the tremors and swung it with all his strength. It connected with Carter's head, sending her crashing to the floor. "Is she?" Olivia began. "Just temporarily disrupted," Reilly said grimly. "We need to restrain her while we finish the sequence." They bound Carter with carbon fiber cables, securing her to a support column. She remained unconscious, but her form rippled occasionally, suggesting the restraints wouldn't hold her for long. "The overload sequence is almost ready," Reilly reported. Alvarez touched the patterns spreading across her neck. "Don't talk like that," Reilly insisted. "We're all getting out." "You know what happens next," Alvarez replied, her voice steady, despite the fear in her eyes. "I can already hear them, the whispers." Olivia examined the spreading patterns. The infection rate varies between individuals. "You might have hours before I turn into that?" Alvarez nodded toward Carter's bound form. "I won't risk it. I'll stay and make sure the sequence completes. Someone needs to guard the controls anyway, in case the others try to stop it." Reilly looked stricken. "Monica." "It's tactical, Captain," Alvarez said firmly. "The mission comes first. Always has." A final tremor, more violent than any before, rocked the station. Ceiling panels crashed down around them as conduits burst, spraying coolant that crystallized instantly upon contact with the transformed surfaces. On the security feed, they saw the entity fully emerging from the shaft, a vast shifting mass that both absorbed and emitted light. It expanded through the drilling bay, the infected team members now completely merged with its substance. "It's coming," Olivia whispered, understanding at last the true scale of what they faced. The geometric patterns on her arm burned as the whispers reached a crescendo, no longer merely sounds but complex equations, unfurling directly in her consciousness, revealing truths about reality that both exhilarated and terrified her. In that moment, she saw with perfect clarity what waited beyond the threshold of transformation, and what would be lost if she crossed it: her humanity, her individuality, subsumed into something greater but fundamentally alien. "Initiate the sequence," she told Reilly, making her choice. "We need to stop this now." The generator room trembled as Reilly entered the final override codes. Warning klaxons blared throughout the station, announcing the imminent core destabilization. Red emergency lights pulsed in synchronized warning. Overload sequence initiated. An automated voice announced, 30 minutes to critical mass. All personnel evacuate immediately. Alvarez took up position by the main console, checking her weapon. Reilly hesitated. Years of military discipline, warring with his unwillingness to leave a soldier behind. "There isn't," Alvarez replied calmly, the geometric patterns now spreading visibly up her jawline. "I can feel it changing me already. The thoughts, they're not mine anymore. I don't have long." Olivia understood the security specialist's choice. She felt her own infection advancing, the mathematical whispers growing louder, more insistent, promising enlightenment beyond human comprehension. Only sheer force of will kept her grounded in her humanity. "We need to reach the emergency bay," she said. "The snowmobiles are our only chance of clearing the blast radius in time." Reilly clasped Alvarez's shoulder one last time. "It's been an honor." "Likewise, Captain." Alvarez's voice remained steady, though her eyes had begun to take on the same luminescent quality they'd seen in Carter and the others. Now go. Save what's left of humanity." They left her standing guard over the countdown, Carter still secured to the support column, temporarily unconscious, but beginning to stir. Navigating the transforming station had become a nightmare of spatial distortion. Corridors stretched impossibly long one moment, contracted to claustrophobic dimensions the next. Walls rippled with geometric patterns that seemed to reach toward them as they passed. The entity is reshaping reality around itself, Olivia explained as they ducked beneath a doorway that had twisted into a spiral. It exists partially in dimensions we can't perceive. What we're seeing is just the shadow of its true form projected into our limited three-dimensional space. Save the physics lesson, Reilly grunted. Focus on getting us out alive. The main route to the emergency bay had been completely blocked by crystalline growths. They were forced to detour through the hydroponic section, once a carefully maintained garden of edible plants, now transformed into an alien landscape. The vegetation had been reshaped into fractal patterns that defied biological classification, each leaf and stem inscribed with the same mathematical equations they'd seen throughout the station. 25 minutes to critical mass, the automated system announced. They pushed forward, Reilly taking point with his sidearm ready. Each step required concentration to resist the whispers urging her to turn back, to embrace the transformation, to become part of something greater than her limited human existence. As they approached the junction leading to the emergency bay, movement ahead stopped them cold. Henderson and Nakamura stood blocking their path, their forms now barely recognizable as human. Their bodies had become translucent, geometric patterns flowing through them like living circuitry. "Dr. Pierce," Henderson said, his voice carrying the same harmonic overtones as Carter's had. "Your resistance is irrational. You've seen what we offer. Why cling to your limited state?" "Because it's mine," Olivia replied. "My humanity, my choices, my identity." "Insignificant constructs," Nakamura countered. "The entity offers perfect unity, existence beyond the constraints of individuality, at the cost of everything that makes us human," Reilly said, raising his weapon. "Move aside." Henderson tilted his head, the movement unnaturally fluid. "You cannot stop what has already begun. The transformation extends beyond this facility. The patterns have been transmitted. Others will continue our work even if you destroy this node." A chill ran through Olivia that had nothing to do with the Arctic cold. "The satellite uplink," Nakamura explained, a smile of inhuman serenity on his face. "Before you isolated us, we sent the base equations, the transformation keys. They've been received at multiple points around the globe. Secondary nodes are already forming." "You're lying," Reilly insisted, though doubt clouded his expression. "Irrelevant," Henderson said dismissively. "Your nuclear option will delay the process at this location, nothing more. The entity exists across multiple planes of reality. What you destroy here is merely its physical anchor point." Without warning, both Henderson and Nakamura lunged forward with impossible speed. Reilly fired repeatedly, the bullets passing through their semi-solid forms with minimal effect. Henderson reached for Olivia, while Nakamura grappled with Reilly. Olivia felt Henderson's touch like ice against her skin. Where his fingers made contact, the infection accelerated, geometric patterns blossoming across her chest and neck. "Accept it," Henderson urged, his face inches from hers. Fighting through the sensation of her very atoms being rearranged, Olivia reached for the emergency flare on her belt. She struck it against Henderson's translucent form. The magnesium flare ignited with blinding intensity, disrupting whatever energy field maintained his cohesion. Henderson's form destabilized momentarily, giving her the chance to break free. Reilly had managed to force Nakamura back, using his tactical flashlight, the intense beam seemingly causing the transformed physicist discomfort. "Move!" he shouted to Olivia. Now, they sprinted past the temporarily disoriented figures, Reilly sealing emergency bulkheads behind them to slow pursuit. 20 minutes to critical mass, the system announced. The emergency bay door required manual override. The electronic locks having failed during the station's transformation, Reilly forced it open using a hydraulic jack from his equipment belt. Inside, 2 snowmobiles waited, fueled and ready for emergency evacuation. The garage door controls are compromised, Olivia noted, examining the sealed exterior exit. We'll need to use the emergency explosives to blow the outer door. Reilly moved to the equipment locker, retrieving shaped charges designed specifically for this purpose. As he prepared the explosives, Olivia checked their survival gear: Arctic weather protection, emergency rations, GPS locators, all essential for surviving in the wilderness until potential rescue. The infected hadn't followed them yet, but Olivia sensed they were regrouping. The whispers in her mind told her the entity was focusing its attention on them now, recognizing the threat they posed to its emergence. 15 minutes to critical mass. Charges set, Reilly announced. Take cover. The controlled explosion blew the exterior door outward, revealing the stark Arctic landscape beyond. Wind and snow immediately whipped into the bay, the temperature plummeting. Olivia pulled on her extreme weather gear, her movements hampered by the advancing infection. The patterns had reached her jaw now, sending pulses of alien awareness through her consciousness. We need to move quickly, she said, her voice strained. Reilly looked at her with concern mingled with wariness. Can you operate the snowmobile? Yes. The infection affects perception first, motor control later. I can still function. They mounted the vehicles, engines roaring to life. Reilly took point, Olivia following closely behind as they burst from the bay into the howling Arctic night. The temperature was 50 below zero, the wind chill pushing it to lethal levels. Without their specialized gear, death would come within minutes. Behind them, Environmental Research Station 47 had become unrecognizable. The once orderly structure now resembled a massive crystalline growth erupting from the ice, geometric patterns pulsing with internal light. The transformation had accelerated dramatically, restructuring the entire facility into an alien architecture that defied conventional physics. 12 minutes to critical mass. They pushed the snowmobiles to maximum speed, racing away from the doomed station. According to calculations, they needed to reach a minimum safe distance of 5 miles before detonation. The GPS units on their vehicles tracked their progress against the countdown. As they crested a ridge of ice, Olivia glanced back. The transformed station now projected a column of light into the sky, not unlike the aurora borealis, but structured in precise geometric patterns. The entity was still ascending, using the facility as its gateway to the surface. The whispers in her mind reached a crescendo, no longer content to suggest but demanding her return. The mathematical equations unfurled in her consciousness, with increasing complexity, revealing glimpses of realities beyond human comprehension. Each revelation was simultaneously ecstatic and agonizing, her brain struggling to process concepts. 8 minutes to critical mass. Olivia's snowmobile began to veer off course as her concentration faltered. She fought to maintain control, both of the vehicle and her own mind. The infection had crossed a critical threshold. The patterns now covered most of her face, and she could feel her perception shifting. The world around her appeared increasingly abstract, physical objects resolving into their component mathematical expressions. Pierce. Reilly's voice crackled through their communication system. Stay on course. She corrected her trajectory with effort, following Reilly's lead across the barren ice field. The GPS showed they had covered 3 miles, still not enough to guarantee survival. 6 minutes to critical mass. Without warning, Olivia's snowmobile engine died. She coasted to a stop, diagnostic systems flashing critical failure. Reilly circled back, pulling alongside her. What happened? he shouted over the wind. Olivia examined the control panel, which now displayed the same geometric patterns spreading across her skin. The infection, it's affecting the electronics somehow. The engine's completely dead. Reilly made a split-second decision. Get on behind me. We'll double up. The extra weight will slow us down, Olivia protested. We won't clear the blast radius in time. We have to try, Reilly insisted. As Olivia moved to transfer to Reilly's snowmobile, she felt a sudden surge in the infection. The patterns pulsed with blinding intensity, sending waves of agony through her nervous system. She collapsed to her knees in the snow. I can't, she gasped. It's accelerating too quickly. I'd only slow you down. I'm not leaving you behind, Reilly said, his voice firm despite the fear in his eyes. You have to, Olivia replied, forcing clarity into her thoughts. Someone has to warn the world about what's coming. The transmission Henderson mentioned. If it's real, this is bigger than just us. 4 minutes to critical mass. Olivia's scientific mind made the calculations, even as her transformed consciousness fought for control. The explosives from the emergency kit, she said urgently. We can use them to collapse the ice shelf beneath the station. It might help contain the blast, direct more of the force downward. There's no time, Reilly argued. There's enough, if I do it. Olivia's decision crystallized with perfect clarity. I'm already infected, James. This is my chance to make it count. Reilly's expression shifted from denial to grim acceptance. He knew she was right. The mission parameters were clear. Contain the threat at all costs. How will you get back to the station in time? Olivia smiled sadly. I won't have to. She pointed to the horizon, where the column of light from the transformed facility had begun to expand outward. It's reaching for me. The infection creates a connection, a quantum entanglement. I can use that. 3 minutes to critical mass. Reilly unloaded the remaining shaped charges from his emergency kit, handing them to Olivia along with the detonator. Their hands met briefly, a final human contact in the face of the incomprehensible. It's been an honor, Dr. Pierce, he said formally. Military training asserting itself in the face of impossible choices. Likewise, Captain. Olivia's voice distorted slightly, the harmonic overtones beginning to manifest. Now go, as far and as fast as you can. Reilly mounted his snowmobile, hesitating one last moment. If there's anything left of you after, I'll fight it as long as I can, she promised. But don't come back for me. Whatever I become, it won't be human anymore. With a final nod, Reilly gunned the engine and sped away across the ice. Olivia watched until his headlight disappeared into the swirling snow, then turned toward the transformed station. 2 minutes to critical mass. The geometric patterns across her body pulsed in synchrony with the distant light column. She felt the entity reaching for her, drawing her back toward its central manifestation. Instead of fighting the connection, she embraced it, using the quantum entanglement to propel herself across space in a manner impossible for an unaltered human. The journey back to the station occurred in a series of disjointed moments, her perception of time and space fragmented by the advancing transformation. One moment she stood alone on the ice field. The next she materialized within the transformed facility, now an impossible cathedral of crystalline geometries and flowing mathematical equations, given physical form. 1 minute to critical mass. The explosives were still clutched in her hands. The detonator primed. Around her, the infected team members had gathered in a circle within what had once been the drilling bay. The shaft had widened to accommodate the entity's manifestation, a column of pure mathematical energy that defied description in human language. Alvarez was there, fully transformed now, her features blurred into the same geometric patterns as the others. She showed no recognition of Olivia, no remnant of the loyal security specialist who had sacrificed herself to ensure the overload sequence. Carter stepped forward, extending her hand in welcome. You've returned to us, she said, her voice multi-layered and harmonic. "The final piece of our circle. I had to," Olivia replied, moving carefully toward the edge of the widened shaft. "To understand what's happening." 30 seconds to critical mass. The entity pulsed with anticipation, sensing her presence. The whispers in Olivia's mind had become a symphony of equations, revealing the entity's true nature, a being of pure mathematics, existing simultaneously across multiple dimensions, perceiving reality as interlocking wave functions rather than solid matter. She could see its intent now, with perfect clarity, not malevolence, but indifference to human existence. Earth had been its home once, before mammals had even evolved. It would reshape the planet to its preferred state, unconcerned with the extinction of species it considered temporary occupants. 20 seconds to critical mass. "Join us," Henderson urged, his form barely recognizable. "Transcend your limitations." Olivia stepped to the edge of the shaft, looking down into depths that seemed to stretch beyond physical space into other dimensions. "I already have," she said, activating the detonator, "just not in the way you intended." The explosives would collapse the ice shelf directly beneath the station, focusing the nuclear blast downward into the entity's primary mass. It wouldn't destroy it completely. Henderson had been right about that, but it might sever its connection to this plane of existence, buying humanity time. 10 seconds to critical mass. As the countdown reached its final moments, Olivia Pierce made her choice. With the last remnants of her humanity, she stepped forward into the abyss, carrying the activated explosives into the heart of the entity's manifestation. The geometric patterns across her body flared with blinding intensity as she fell, not through physical space, but through layers of reality. In her final human thought, she hoped Reilly had reached safe distance, that someone would survive to warn the world about what was coming. 5. The entity sensed her intent too late, its consciousness recoiling from the threat she posed. 4. The transformed team members moved to stop her, but the quantum connection that had drawn her back now pulled her deeper, beyond their reach. 3. Olivia's consciousness expanded beyond her physical form, experiencing simultaneously the past, present, and possible futures, the entity's perception bleeding into her own. 2. She saw the entity's true form across multiple dimensions, its beauty and alienness beyond human comprehension. 1. In the moment before detonation, Olivia understood everything: the entity's origins, its purpose, the mathematical elegance of its existence. And in that understanding, she found her final act of defiance, not against knowledge or evolution, but against the erasure of humanity's unique perspective in the cosmos. Critical mass achieved. The nuclear core detonated, its force multiplied and directed by the secondary explosives. The blast tore through the transformed station in a column of purifying fire, driving downward into the ancient chamber, where the entity had slumbered for millennia. The ice shelf collapsed, creating a massive crater that contained much of the explosion's horizontal force. Miles away, Captain James Reilly witnessed the mushroom cloud rising against the Arctic sky, its perfect symmetry belying the chaos of its creation. The shockwave reached him moments later, nearly throwing his snowmobile off course. He maintained control, pushing onward through the swirling snow, carrying with him the knowledge of what waited beneath the ice and what might already be spreading across the globe. 6 months had passed since the Alaskan Research Facility incident, as it appeared in classified government documents. The official story described a catastrophic nuclear reactor failure during a routine environmental research mission, a tragic accident that claimed the lives of 8 scientists and military personnel. Families received condolence letters, posthumous medals for service to the nation, substantial compensation packages, and non-disclosure agreements with severe penalties for violation. Captain James Reilly sat in a sterile conference room, deep within a Nevada military installation, staring at the satellite imagery projected on the wall. The crater where Environmental Research Station 47 had once stood measured nearly a mile across, its perfectly circular shape belying its supposed accidental origin. More concerning were the formations growing around its perimeter, crystalline structures, arranged in geometric patterns, identical to those he still saw in his nightmares. The containment effort failed, General Wallace stated flatly. The entity was damaged, not destroyed. Reilly had spent weeks debriefing after his rescue, picked up by military helicopter 3 days after he'd fled the doomed station. He'd told them everything: the chamber beneath the ice, the infection that transformed his team, the entity's nature as a being of multiple dimensions. Most importantly, he'd warned them about Henderson's claim that transformation keys had been transmitted to locations around the globe. Initially, his superiors had been skeptical. Then the first anomalies appeared. Seismic activity around the crater has increased by 47% in the past month, Dr. Eleanor Voss reported, sliding a data tablet across the table. The theoretical physicist had been assigned to head the analysis team, studying the Alaskan phenomenon. The patterns match those recorded just before your team breached the chamber. It's regenerating, Reilly concluded. Worse than that, Wallace replied grimly. It's not alone. The general pressed a button, changing the display to a world map marked with 3 pulsing red indicators: the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean, an unmapped region of the Amazon rainforest, and the Ross Ice Shelf in Antarctica. These locations are exhibiting energy signatures identical to what your team recorded before the breach. Same frequencies, same patterns, same mathematical progressions. Reilly felt the blood drain from his face. Secondary nodes. Just like Henderson said, we've contained the sites as best we can. Wallace continued. Research vessels deployed to the Mariana Trench, special forces teams to the Amazon, a scientific expedition to Antarctica. But if these are what we think they are, they're waiting to be activated, Reilly finished. The transmission must have reached them. Dr. Voss nodded. Even the satellite uplink from your station transmitted approximately 16 terabytes of data before it went offline. Most was corrupted beyond recovery, but we've managed to reconstruct fragments. They contain the same geometric patterns your team reported, mathematical expressions of impossible complexity. The transformation keys, Reilly murmured. We believe so, Voss agreed. More concerning is that these patterns appeared briefly on the internet before our cybersecurity teams could contain them. They were disguised as an encryption puzzle, a challenge for mathematicians and codebreakers. Several solved it before we shut it down. How many people were exposed? Reilly demanded. Wallace and Voss exchanged uncomfortable glances. Approximately 300 individuals across 27 countries, the general finally admitted. We've located most of them. They're under observation. Observation? Reilly's voice rose. They should be in quarantine. If the patterns work the same way they did on my team. The effects appear to vary based on exposure method, Voss interjected. Direct physical contact with the entity or its samples caused rapid transformation. Visual exposure to the patterns alone seems to produce a more gradual effect. Subtle changes in brain activity, minor alterations in perception, nothing immediately threatening. Yet, Reilly added grimly. Wallace nodded, hence the observation. We're monitoring for any signs of the physical transformations you described. Reilly studied the world map, the red indicators pulsing like wounds in the Earth's surface. What's the containment plan? For now, surveillance and research, Wallace replied. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we attempt any direct intervention. The nuclear option is authorized for each site, if necessary. But after Alaska, we know it might not be enough. Reilly finished. The meeting concluded with assignments. Reilly would join the Antarctic expedition. His first-hand experience with the entity made him invaluable, despite the psychological trauma he still carried. Voss would continue analyzing the mathematical patterns, searching for weaknesses in their structure. Wallace would coordinate the global monitoring effort from this facility, maintaining the official cover story while preparing humanity's defenses against a threat most people couldn't begin to comprehend. As the others filed out, Reilly lingered, studying the satellite image of the Alaskan crater. Something caught his attention, a pattern in the crystalline formations that seemed familiar. "Can you enhance this section?" he asked the technician. The image zoomed in, revealing geometric structures arranged in a specific configuration. Reilly felt a chill of recognition. "That's Morse code," he said quietly. The technician looked skeptical, but ran an analysis program. The computer confirmed Reilly's observation, translating the pattern. "Still here. Still human. Help." "Who authorized this communication?" Wallace demanded, returning to the room. "It's not ours, sir," the technician replied. "These formations appeared naturally, or what we've been categorizing as naturally." Reilly stared at the message, a cold weight settling in his stomach. "It's Pierce," he whispered, "or what's left of her." "Impossible," Wallace said flatly. "No one could have survived that blast, transformed or not. The entity exists across multiple dimensions," Reilly reminded him. "Pierce was already partially transformed when she detonated the charges. What if part of her consciousness survived, integrated with the entity, but maintaining some independence?" Voss had returned, drawn by the commotion. She studied the pattern with scientific detachment. "It's theoretically possible. If the transformation process creates a quantum entanglement between human consciousness and the entity's neural network, a partial preservation of identity might occur." "We need to investigate," Reilly insisted. "Absolutely not," Wallace countered. "The risk is too great. This could be a lure, the entity attempting to draw us back. Or it could be the one advantage we have," Reilly argued. "A human perspective inside the entity's consciousness, someone who understands both sides of this conflict." The debate continued for hours, eventually reaching a compromise. A small drone would be sent to the crater's edge to gather more data, close enough to record detailed readings, but maintaining a safe distance from the anomalous formations. 2 weeks later, Reilly watched the drone footage with Voss in the analysis lab. The crystalline structures had grown significantly, forming complex geometric architectures that seemed to shift between states when viewed from different angles. "The patterns are evolving," Voss noted, "becoming more complex." The drone's specialized sensors recorded electromagnetic frequencies emanating from the formations, patterns that matched human brainwave activity, but with significant alterations. "There's definitely consciousness there," Voss confirmed. "Whether it's Dr. Pierce or something merely using her patterns is impossible to determine without closer examination." "She sacrificed herself to save humanity," Reilly said quietly. "If any part of her remains, we owe her the chance to communicate." "The risk?" "I know the risks better than anyone," Reilly interrupted. "I watched my team transform one by one. I understand what we're facing. But if Pierce found a way to maintain her humanity while integrated with the entity, that knowledge could be the key to everything." Eventually, a second compromise was reached. A more sophisticated drone would be equipped with a communication system designed by Voss, one that could transmit and receive the mathematical patterns without risk to human operators. The drone would establish contact from a safe distance, attempting to verify Pierce's identity through knowledge only she would possess. The transmission, when it finally came through, appeared as geometric patterns on the laboratory screens. Voss's translation algorithm converted them to English text. "Reilly, coordinates 57.892 by -153.376. Look beneath. Not alone." "Those coordinates," Reilly said, pulling up a map. "What does she mean, look beneath?" Voss wondered. Sonar surveys of the location revealed an underwater formation similar to the one in the Alaskan crater, geometric structures extending from the seafloor in perfect mathematical patterns. It hadn't been there in previous maritime surveys. A fourth node, Wallace concluded, when presented with the findings. And there could be more, Voss added. The entity seems to be establishing a network, connection points, across the globe. Reilly studied the sonar images, his military mind calculating strategies and contingencies. We're running out of time. These formations are growing faster than the others. What does she mean by not alone? Wallace asked. The answer came 2 days later, when the Antarctic expedition reported their first direct contact with the entity manifestation there. The crystalline formations had begun emitting the same mathematical patterns, but with crucial differences. It's not the same entity, Voss realized, comparing the patterns. The mathematical structure is similar but distinct, like different dialects of the same language. There's more than one of these things, Wallace asked incredulously. Pierce was trying to warn us. Reilly said, the Alaskan entity isn't alone. There are others of its kind, and they're awakening. The revelation transformed the nature of their mission. What had begun as a containment operation now became an existential struggle for the planet itself. If multiple entities were establishing connection points around the globe, the transformation Pierce had described could spread worldwide. In isolated regions near each manifestation site, reports began filtering in strange phenomena, people experiencing unusual dreams, geometric patterns appearing spontaneously in natural formations. The infection was spreading, subtle but persistent. 6 more months passed. Research facilities were established at safe distances from each known node, studying the entity's communications and growth patterns. Reilly divided his time between the Antarctic and Alaska sites, serving as the liaison between scientific teams and military containment forces. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a routine drone survey of the Alaskan crater, a new pattern appeared, more complex than any before, stretching nearly half a mile across the transformed landscape. Voss's translation algorithm struggled with its complexity. Requiring 3 days of supercomputer processing to decode, they communicate through mathematical resonance. Disrupt the pattern, disrupt the connection. 15,000 years ago, indigenous peoples used sound to force dormancy. Find the counter-frequency. I am fighting from within, but cannot hold much longer. Olivia. Sound. Wallace was skeptical. How could sound affect something that exists across multiple dimensions? Everything vibrates at specific frequencies, Voss explained, excitement building in her voice. If these entities perceive reality as mathematical expressions, then sound waves, which are mathematical in nature, could potentially disrupt their patterns. Like an opera singer shattering a glass with the right note, Reilly suggested. Exactly, but infinitely more complex. They began searching archaeological records, focusing on indigenous Alaskan cultures dating back to the end of the last ice age. Among the artifacts were curious instruments, drums with specific geometric patterns carved into their surfaces, flutes with mathematically precise hole spacings that produced unusual harmonics. These weren't just ceremonial, Voss realized. They were tools, weapons, even designed to produce specific frequency combinations. Using the ancient instruments as models, Voss's team developed acoustic generators capable of producing the counter frequencies on a massive scale. The deployment was authorized simultaneously at all known entity manifestation sites. Reilly supervised the Alaskan operation personally, watching as the massive generators were positioned around the crater's perimeter. As they activated, producing sounds at the edge of human perception, the crystalline formations began to vibrate visibly. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The geometric patterns lost coherence. the structures beginning to fracture and collapse. From the crater rose a column of energy, unlike anything they'd seen before, not the ordered mathematical patterns of the entity, but chaotic, desperate surges. Through the drone's sensors, a final transmission came through, fragmented and deteriorating rapidly. It works. They return to dormancy, not destruction. Hibernation. Will sleep again. Remember the frequency. Guard it. They will try again. Thank you, James. Goodbye. The acoustic disruption continued for 72 hours at each site. When finally deactivated, the crystalline formations had crumbled to dust, the geometric patterns erased from the landscape. Seismic readings confirmed what Pierce had said. The entities hadn't been destroyed, merely forced back into dormancy deep beneath the Earth's surface. 1 month later, Reilly stood at the edge of the Alaskan crater, now being filled with concrete as part of the containment protocol. The site would be permanently monitored, acoustic generators ready to activate at the first sign of renewed activity. Do you think any part of her survived? Voss asked, standing beside him. Reilly considered the question, remembering Olivia Pierce as she had been brilliant, determined, willing to sacrifice everything to save humanity from a threat it couldn't comprehend. I don't know, he answered, honestly, but she found a way to fight, even after being consumed by something beyond human understanding. She maintained her humanity when everything around her was being transformed into something alien. That's a kind of survival. Wallace approached, carrying sealed orders. The president has authorized the formation of a new agency, Operation Resonance. We'll be monitoring for any signs of the entities awakening anywhere on Earth. You've been selected to head the field operations, Captain. Not Captain anymore, Reilly reminded him, having resigned his commission after the initial incident. Just Reilly. Not according to these, Wallace said, handing him the documents. You've been reinstated with a promotion. Colonel Reilly, effective immediately. Reilly accepted the orders with mixed emotions. The mission would continue. Humanity had won a reprieve, not a victory. The entities remained beneath the surface, waiting for the acoustic effects to fade, for the counter-frequencies to be forgotten again, as they had been 15,000 years before. As they departed the containment site, Reilly glanced back one last time. Among the workers sealing the crater, isolated villages dotted the Alaskan wilderness beyond. In those remote communities, elders still told stories of ancient beings that slumbered beneath the ice, of the dangers that came from disturbing their rest, of the sounds that kept the darkness at bay. Those stories would be preserved now, their warnings heeded. Operation Resonance would ensure that humanity remained vigilant against what waited below. The original inhabitants of Earth, temporarily displaced, but never truly gone. Somewhere within those ancient consciousnesses, Reilly liked to believe, a fragment of Olivia Pierce remained, a human perspective integrated into something vast and alien, maintaining the connection that had saved the world and might someday be needed again. The Alaskan Triangle had claimed many over the centuries. It had nearly claimed all of humanity. But for now, the whispers had faded from the tundra, and the world continued, unaware of how close it had come to transformation. Colonel James Reilly boarded the helicopter, carrying with him the knowledge that would keep it that way for as long as possible.